How's it all going? In today's video I'm going to go through my settings, keybinds, graphics, and just general tips and reasoning behind these settings as well. This is a video I've been meaning to make for a while now, and with a couple of comments I've received on some recent videos, I thought it was finally time. To start off with, here's my mouse settings. I run a 12 in-game sense with an 1800 DPI. I run relative, although I have been experimenting a bit with legacy. I got some knowledge from Promethazine and mobbing, shout out to them, that there's some ongoing issues with input delay and other things when it comes to keyboard and mouse on Modern Warfare 3. It's been addressed by the developers and hopefully there's a fix soon so Kbam feels fluid again. I have been having a lot of issues where instead of silent shotting, I'll throw my knife when I know I hit the keybinds right, aiming not exactly where I aimed, and sometimes shots not even shooting. So it has been addressed. Hopefully they release a patch soon that fixes this input delay, and from there it'll be smooth sailing. Anyway, relative is a lot more consistent. Legacy provides a more snappy, flicky feel if that's what you desire. Otherwise, relative is more of a precise option, and that's what I use. Going on to monitor distance coefficient, I have this set as 180, as you can see here. Based on my research, monitor distance coefficient is based on your monitor. If you have a 1920 by 1080, the setting would likely be at 1.33, and a 2560 by 1080 would be a 1.78, but the closest you can get is 1.80. In terms of if you have a 1440p or 4K or 720, whatever, I believe that doesn't matter in terms of the ratio. This is just looking at the size of your screen. Now, I haven't really messed with my mouse calibration. The only thing I've really done is decrease the mouse wheel delay to 0. Other than that, I haven't really touched this at all. Now onto keybinds. I've always said keybinds is a very important but personal thing. The only thing I would suggest with keybinds that works with everyone is silent shotting. We'll get to that in a bit, but to start with I'll go through all the keybinds I've changed from default. Now every one that has a orange blip like this, I've changed myself and made it custom. Anything other without the orange blimp will be just default. But as you can see here, I have crouch slide on caps lock. I have my switch weapon at 1. I have weapon mount at T, although I do think that is default. I think I just accidentally switched it over, which is why there's an orange blimp. I'm not too sure though. I changed my weapon inspect to 4 because it was closer. I found this useful for trick shotting. When you want to go for a trick shot, it's easier to the 4 keys closer than the I key, because I is what it usually is default. On top of that, I also do this thing called weapon inspect glitching. I'm not too sure if many people know about it. I just randomly discovered it on Modern Warfare 2. I've seen a couple other people using it in some videos, but it's practically when you're running off spawn in S&D, you can inspect your weapon as you run. You do need automatic tactical sprint, but if you want a tutorial on how to do that, let me know in the comments and I can make that for you. I have my melee at E. I believe that was V as default. I just find E to be a lot more efficient and quicker to hit. Now here's where I get into silent shotting. Lethal equipment, I have it on the button closest to my thumb on my mouse. And then, so for silent shotting, what you would want to do is you would shoot, switch to your knife on your thumb, and then press the 1 key as quick as you can. I'm going to have an individual how-to silent shot video for Modern Warfare 3 coming out in the near future, so keep an eye on that if you also want to watch that. Now I've also got for Warzone armor plate drop item at 3. Looking at these combat advanced keybinds, I've changed my change zoom and toggle hybrid to F3, although I'm going to bring this up a bit later, why this is a bit important, so keep that in mind. And then for my kill streaks, I've pretty much got them all on different keys. I've got kill streak 1 at 2, kill streak 2 at 5, kill streak 3 at 6, and kill streak 4 at 7. The 7 should usually be an MGB or something like that. The reason I have these kill streaks at different numbers is, as you can see, I had inspect weapon at number 4, and I had armor plate at 3. So that's why you have to change these as well. For overlay keybinds, I've got backpack at the other button on my mouse, so that's the one further away from my thumb, is the best way I can explain it. And then going down here, you've got menu advanced keybinds. Now there is one thing I want to bring up here, which is quite useful that maybe not a lot of people know, is that this one here, F10. This keybind here is very useful for situations like when you're spawning in and there's a loud as shit helicopter playing in the background and you're trying to hear Discord, game chat, anything, and you can't hear shit because the helicopter's blaring in your ears. This is perfect. F10 will mute the game but not the game chat so that you can hear the people you're in the game with. It's also handy that if you're trying to hear reactions better and maybe you've got your game volume a bit too loud, you can then mute the game so that you can hear the reactions. Perfect for accusations and you don't want the gunshots to block what they're saying. Now that's it for keybinds, so moving on to gameplay. For gameplay, I will only mention the settings here that I've actively changed and recommend. First is automatic tactical sprint. This can be personal preference, as maybe sometimes you don't want to just tactical sprint, but rather you want to just regular sprint or even walk around, because with automatic tactical sprint, pretty much as soon as you press W, you're going to be tactical sprinting. But I find it a distraction and a pain to keep spamming the shift key to sprint. I instead have my pinky resting on control so I'm ready to go prone in any situation. I turned off automatic airborne mantle. Ground mantle's off as well. As you can see here, also it is off. The reason I have this off is for jump shots. If I'm aiming at a specific thing and I want to jump and shoot, having this on will make it so that you automatically mantle that obstacle, resulting in either you looking like an idiot jumping on top of a box and them just beaming you, or completely putting off your shot you're trying to hit. So having this off is a huge must. Another thing here is slide cancel sprint. Now I do have to make a shout out to Mobbing here. He made a Twitter post that kind of shine light on this setting here. Basically, if you have this on, every time you go to slide, it'll cancel your tac sprint. Therefore, if you want to slide cancel and not have to refresh your tac sprint every time you get out of that slide, I'd recommend turning this off. Now, if we go down a bit here is what I was talking about earlier. Change zoom. I believe default is set to sprint / tactical sprint / focus. Now, this is what I was talking about with the hybrid. I made this so that it just changes zoom, so that your sprinting and changing zoom would be different. Because when you are sprinting around the map and you go to aim in somewhere and say you're still holding the shift key, the scope would zoom in, and I found that to be quite annoying sometimes because it ruins my peripheral vision. I like to use my peripheral vision while I'm aiming in. Maybe I might be looking at one area, but I'm also looking around as well. So I highly recommend changing it to change zoom and then make your change zoom / toggle hybrid to F3 or whatever key you find helpful. Now, have your armor plate as apply all. That is just a Warzone setting and a zombies setting, just so that you don't have to keep spamming your armor plate key to apply armor. If you press it once, it will apply all of them usually. But other than that, that's typically it for the gameplay. I'm going to move on to controller. Now, I'm not a full-time controller player, but I played ranked last season for half a season and got to diamond, so I still have some insight on settings. First things first is the button layout. I would suggest, if you didn't already have some custom button layouts, to do so. It creates a severe increase in performance, especially if you don't have a modded controller with paddles. My personal controller button layout is I have jump, stand, mantle at right stick. I have slide and dive on LT or L2. I have fire weapon at RB or R1. Aim down sights at LB or L1. Lethal equipment at RT or R2. My tactical equipment is at B or circle. And my melee is at A or X. Now that was in reference to A being Xbox, X being PlayStation controller, just for reference. Going back here, I mean, controller vibrations are no-brainer, don't have that on. And the other thing would be dead zones. Now I haven't really played with my dead zones a lot. Like I said, I don't play controller a lot, therefore I don't mess around with this too much. Although if you do play controller mainly, maybe you want to look up a dead zone video. I'm sure they would have a lot more insight and knowledge on what dead zones to use. But in saying that, going into aiming, now it depends whether you're rig gunning or sniping. If I'm rig gunning, I typically would stick to the 6 to 8 sensitivity range, as that's where your aim assist is going to be the strongest and you're going to be most precise. I would also have my aim response curve type at dynamic. My custom sensitivity per zoom is off. And then for rig gunning, you'll want default or Black Ops. That is a very personal opinion, Black Ops or default. I know multiple people who use Black Ops, and I know multiple people who use default. Me personally, I use default along with most other people I do know. But again, that is a personal thing. I'd suggest trying both out, seeing what you find best. Now, if I'm sniping, this is more of a broad range and again, a lot more personal. But I'd tend to stick to the 8 to 20 region. And I know that's insane, but it's all personal preference again. I've said that a lot of times in this video. But back on Modern Warfare 19 and Black Ops Cold War, when I used to be a controller player, I'd be running 2020. And once you get used to it, it feels really nice. But again, going down here, stick to dynamic for both sniping and red gunning. The only other thing here I'd suggest is switching default to precision. The difference between precision, default and Black Ops is more of a sticky kind of aim assist, as in if you're aiming by someone, it'll kind of stick to them. But precision only, as it says there, only kicks in when aiming closer to target. Therefore, if you're scoping in on someone and it's close, it'll usually stick to them. It's not going to do that for default. Default only slows down once you move across them. So that's it for the aiming part of controller. I'll get into gameplay, and this is pretty much exactly the same as keyboard and mouse, apart from you've got plunging water, I've got set to free. You've also got slide and dive behavior, so you can either tap to slide, tap to dive, or you can even, and now in Modern Warfare 3, disable slide or disable dive. I have heard if you disable dive, it increases your slide cancelling speed, although me personally, I don't think I'd ever get rid of dive because in a lot of situations that can save you. Now I do want to talk about this, prioritize interact. Now for Warzone, this is very handy as it only requires one hit of a button to pick up guns. It's also handy in multiplayer too because say you don't have time to reload but there's a gun underneath you can quickly pick it up. Although it does prioritize interact, therefore if you're above something that gives you the blimp to interact with and you try to reload, if you just press it once, it'll pick up the gun or do the interaction before reload. So having this setting means you will have to get used to acknowledging whether you're next to an interactable object, and rather press the button you need to hold to reload. It is something you have to get used to. It took a while for me, but now I've got used to it. It's very handy to have both. Very handy for Warzone 2, which will be coming out Season 1, so we have that to look forward to. Again, armor plate behavior, apply all. Other than that, there's nothing really else in the controller section that I can advise you on. Next, we've got graphics. There's some important details here that will greatly decide whether or not your game runs smoothly or not. First, you're going to always want to have full screen exclusive. What this does is it makes it so that this monitor is exclusively playing this game. Therefore, all the power and all the usage is going into the game. This will be a huge decider on your game running smooth. Next, you're going to want to identify what screen refresh rate you're on and what resolution you're on. Now to do that, all you need to go into is the settings, system, display, and advanced display. This will show here what refresh rate your monitor is and what resolution it is. You're going to want to match that to the settings in game, as that will maximize performance of your monitor. Now moving down here, I do have NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency on plus boost because I do have a rough area for internet. I don't have the best connection. I'm struggling a lot with Wi-Fi, so this is helpful for me. It does increase GPU power draw, as you can see there, but it is worth it for me. But that is a very personal thing, whether you've got Ethernet. If you've got really good internet, I'd say leave it off just so that your GPU can be used elsewhere. But if you do have not a great connection, I do recommend this as well. The next thing is, custom frame rate limit. The only time you'd really want to mess with this is if you're struggling and you're getting a lot of FPS drops. In that case, I'd maybe cap it to like 90 or 100 just so that it's always running smooth. Because if the game's trying to get more FPS than it's capable of, that's when you'll get hitches and frame drops. But I'm usually not pushing any more than 150, 160, so I've got my frame rate limit at 200. It works well for me. Now moving on to quality. In terms of actual quality and graphics, that's heavily based on what kind of PC you are running. I couldn't tell you exactly what settings to use, but I will go through mine so you can copy if you like, see if it works. But usually the theory is you want VRAM usage in a comfortable place. You don't want it too close to the target line, and definitely not beyond the target line at all. That's when you'll start experiencing problems. As you can see here, I could probably increase my graphics a little bit, make things look a little nicer, but as I stand right now, my game looks amazing. I'm happy with performance. I'm not going to mess with it. But I will scroll through these if you want to pause and copy them yourselves. The only thing I would really recommend is turning off depth of field. Anything motion blur is just a no-go. It makes the game look horrible. Going into view here, I have my field of view at 120, but as a Kbam player, that's something I can run comfortably. Now when it comes to controller, I did hear that 95 to 105 is about the sweet spot for aim assist. In that range, I believe your aim assist is at its strongest, so maybe I'd recommend playing around between that 95 to 105 line, seeing how it feels. I have my ADS field of view at independent. Just correcting myself here, I've actually got it on the wrong setting. I usually have that set on affected, and what I'm about to say is what it is for affected. This only really applies to anything below 3.25 times anyway. It just means that when I scope in with an iron sight AR, it doesn't zoom in. I have my weapon field of view at wide. This can be quite helpful as having the gun too big can cause a bit of a blind spot, and the last thing you want is to die to an enemy due to a blind spot that your gun made. So having it at wide makes it smaller. Now here you're going to want to turn world motion blur off and weapon motion blur off. Just makes it look a lot more smoother and cleaner. And that's about it when it comes to this. There is inverted flashbangs, which I will show a example of it now. As you can see, all it does, if you have sensitive eyes, it makes it so that it doesn't flash the screen white, it flashes the screen black, saving your eyes. Now, when it comes to audio, the only really suggestion I have for audio is to have gameplay music at 0. If I show you here, gameplay music at 0, cinematic music volume at 0, and kind of just focus on the effects volume. Now I do have my voice chat and dialogue volume at 14, as that is important to hear. 14 is a good sweet spot for me so that I can hear game chat as well as the game, and nothing overpowers either one. Dialogue volume, that's stuff like enemy counter UAV inbound. That's the announcer of the game. You're going to want to hear that just in case you don't hear them call in an SAE, and then you die to an SAE and you have no idea how or why. So it is advised you have the dialogue volume up a little bit, just so that you can hear that announcer. Effects volumes is pretty much your footsteps, the ambient noises of the map, all that. So you're going to want that high. If I'm really tryharding in a game, then I will turn these up, but for now, I just chill, I just have it low. With dead silence in this game, there's no point anyway having your game loud because you can barely hear them coming up behind you anyway. There's nothing else really in the audio section that I can help you with. I mean, you've got your subtitles here, your functionality in here, stuff like Juggernaut music if you want to turn that off, or hit marker sounds, you know the deal. Moving on to interface, I do have a few things in here that I have changed and recommend changing. First would be, I actually have my crosshairs off. Now I'll show you what that looks like now. As you can see here, I've removed the actual bars that go around the center dot. Now that is a personal thing. I just like how minimalist and clean it looks just having a center dot. I have the center dot scale at default as well, but that does remove stuff like your throwing knife crosshair, which I'll show here. It just makes it a center dot, but again, that's just my personal preference, as I like a minimalistic look, and I think it makes the clips look a little cleaner too. I did change my player names to abbreviated, just because that can be another little blind spot if you have a clan tag there. It's very situational, and very rarely will you get a teammate that blocks an enemy from vision, although it does happen. And I'd even suggest maybe putting it on icon only. But for the meantime, I keep it on abbreviated. Now telemetry, I have custom. All I really like to show is my FPS counter, server latency, and packet loss. Obviously you see there's a lot of other things you can add, but up to you what you want to add. I like FPS, server, and packet loss just to see packet loss if I'm lagging, server latency to see what kind of server I'm in, what ping I'm running, and my FPS to see how my FPS is doing. Other than that, there's nothing else I can really show you in terms of settings. That's all my settings for me to show. The only other thing I have is filters, and if you did want a filter video explaining all that, giving a tutorial for that, let me know in the comments as well. Now this isn't my typical style of video. I just got a few comments asking for my settings, as well as I've been meaning to make this as well, as I said at the start. If you did find this guide helpful, I would really appreciate a like and a sub. Check out my other videos. My other videos are more fast paced, more gameplay, more funny moments, stuff like that. But nevertheless, thank you for watching and peace. Nowadays I am